Welcome to Voyage Daily Tech, the most important news personalized for you every day, supported by Voyage.com.
Today we're sharing 5 stories. First, NASA's Perseverance rover finds what could be the clearest signs of life on Mars, but the mission to bring the 3.5 billion-year-old samples home is now in jeopardy. Second, NASA escalates the new space race by banning all Chinese nationals from its facilities, with acting administrator Sean Duffy vowing they won't let China win. Third, a Goldman Sachs survey reveals the ultra-rich are pulling billions from private equity to bet on AI stocks, while also demanding physical gold and cryptocurrency. Fourth, pharma giant Merck scraps its £1 billion UK research hub, calling the country uninvestable, a move that follows pullbacks from AstraZeneca and Novartis. And fifth, a cyber attack by the scattered lapsus. Hunters has paralysed Jaguar Land Rover, halting production of 1,000 cars a day and threatening its entire supply chain. NASA's Perseverance rover has found what scientists are calling the clearest potential signs of life ever discovered on Mars. In a dusty, ancient riverbed, the rover found 3.5 billion-year-old mudstones dotted with intriguing markings nicknamed Leopard-Spots. Scientists believe these features could be associated with ancient Martian microbes. A top NASA official put it this way: "It's like seeing a leftover fossil. Maybe it was a leftover meal. Maybe that meal's been excreted and that's what we're seeing here." These findings are so significant, they meet NASA's official criteria for a potential biosignature. Now, a biosignature is basically a fingerprint of life, but the real challenge for scientists is telling the difference between a true sign of past life and a complex geological process that just mimics it. They have to be incredibly careful to rule out all non-biological explanations before making any announcement. That's the burden of proof, and it's huge. This is the real deal. A lead scientist on the paper called it the most compelling potential biosignature detection that we've had to date. Another expert from the mission stated, "We've not had something like this before," so I think that's the big deal. But that's not the whole picture. The real turning point is that the only way to fully confirm if microbes created these marks is to bring the rocks back to Earth for analysis. So you might be asking, why can't this multi-billion-dollar rover figure it out on its own? Well, the thing is, Perseverance has incredible tools like its Sherlock and Pixel instruments that can spot organic molecules and identify the chemical makeup of rocks. It's a fantastic robotic field geologist, but it's limited. It can't perform the kind of exhaustive tests like high-resolution isotopic analysis that are needed to definitively rule out non-biological origins. For that, you need the massive, powerful equipment in labs right here on Earth. Think of the rover as the first responder who secures the scene, but the full forensic analysis has to happen back at headquarters. And what really brought this to a head was the next development. Just as we make this monumental discovery, the mission to do exactly that is in serious trouble. Its future looks highly uncertain. The US Space Agency's science budget is facing huge cuts, and the sample return mission is one of those facing cancellation. The reason for the trouble lies in the mission's sheer complexity and cost. The Mars sample return mission is one of the most complex robotic missions ever attempted. It requires launching a rocket off the surface of another planet, something humanity has never done before. Then that rocket has to perform a perfect rendezvous in Mars orbit with another spacecraft that will bring the samples home. The engineering is mind-boggling, and the cost has spiraled from an initial estimate of around $4 billion to a staggering $11 billion, with the return date pushed back to maybe 2040. That massive price tag and delay is what makes it so vulnerable to budget cuts. So the samples have been collected, stored in canisters, and are now just sitting on the surface of Mars, waiting. However, if you zoom out, you'll see another layer of strategy at play. While NASA's plans hang in the balance, China is pursuing its own sample return mission that could launch as soon as 2028. China's mission, called Tianwen-3, is reportedly on track. If they launch in 2028, they could have Martian samples back on Earth by 2031, potentially a full decade before NASA. This sets up a situation where the nation that gets these rocks first could control the scientific narrative and access to what might be the single most important discovery in human history. It elevates this from a scientific quest to a full-blown geopolitical race. The potential discovery of a lifetime is sitting on the red planet, and now it's a race to see who will be the first to get their hands on it. Speaking of the race to get to Mars, the competition between the US and China just heated up dramatically right here on Earth. NASA just blocked all Chinese nationals from its facilities, even those with valid US visas. On September 5th, Chinese contractors and students working at the agency suddenly found themselves locked out. They lost all access to NASA's systems, facilities, and networks, and were barred from participating in meetings, both in person and virtual. This isn't just an internal policy decision. It's rooted in a piece of legislation called the Wolf Amendment, passed way back in 2011. This law specifically prohibits NASA from using its funds for any direct bilateral cooperation with China without explicit approval from Congress. It was designed to address national security and human rights concerns, but its practical effect is a broad-based exclusion. What makes this so significant is that it's a blanket ban based on nationality, which is very different from the usual process where individuals are assessed for security clearance on a case-by-case basis. NASA confirmed the move was to ensure the security of its work, but this is about much more than just data. This move highlights how the very definition of a national security threat in space has dramatically evolved. During the Cold War, it was all about military applications, spy satellites, missile defense. But today, it's about scientific leadership, economic control, and protecting sensitive technologies that have dual uses. For example, China has a secretive, reusable space plane that has shown it can release and retrieve objects in orbit. While that could be for satellite repair, it could also be used to inspect, interfere with, or even disable another country's satellites. This is the kind of dual-use technology the US is trying to safeguard. This is the latest shot fired in a new escalating space race between the two biggest economies on Earth. Chinese astronauts are already banned from the International Space Station because Washington bars NASA from sharing data with China. But this new sweeping restriction on ground access takes the rivalry to a whole new level. The result? We're witnessing the creation of a scientific iron curtain in space. We now have two separate competing ecosystems, a US-led one and a China-led one, with very little collaboration between them. While this pushes both sides to innovate independently, like China building its own Tiangong space station, it creates massive problems for global challenges. Think about things like managing space debris or planetary defense against asteroids. Those are problems that are almost impossible to solve effectively without global cooperation and data sharing. This division makes everyone less safe. And NASA's leadership is not mincing words. Acting Administrator Sean Duffy just went on the record with a statement that is an absolute bombshell. He said, "We're in a second space race right now. The Chinese want to get back to the moon before us. That's not going to happen." Interestingly enough, this hardline stance might be having an unintended consequence. While the goal is to slow China down, policies like this might actually be accelerating their progress. It's creating what experts call a reverse brain drain. For decades, the US attracted the best scientific minds from around the world, including China. But now, by blocking access, many of these highly skilled Chinese scientists and engineers are returning home. In fact, one study showed that over 1,400 US-based Chinese scientists switched their affiliation to Chinese institutions in a single year. China is welcoming them back with open arms, and it's supercharging their domestic space program with talent that was trained right here in the United States. This isn't just about getting to the moon first. It's about who can control its resources once they are there. The moon contains valuable minerals, including rare earths, metals like iron and titanium, and helium, which is used in everything from superconductors to medical equipment. The focus is on a specific isotope called helium-3, which is incredibly rare on Earth but more abundant on the moon. It's seen as a potential wonder fuel for future nuclear fusion reactors. But there's a catch. The economic case is still very speculative. First, we don't have working helium-3 fusion reactors yet. Second, the concentration on the moon is tiny, maybe 20 parts per billion. To power just 10% of the Earth's energy needs, you'd have to process hundreds of tons of lunar soil every single second. The cost would be astronomical, potentially in the trillions of dollars. So for now, the race for lunar resources is more about geopolitical posturing and securing future claims than it is about a realistic near-term business plan. As US lawmakers stressed at a recent Senate hearing, the competition is fierce. Republican Senator Ted Cruz put it bluntly, stating that if adversaries achieve dominant space capabilities, it would pose a profound risk to America, he added. the stakes could not be higher. We were just talking about nations competing for technological dominance. And that same theme of high stakes strategy is playing out in the world of high finance. A massive shakeup is happening inside the portfolios of the world's wealthiest families. In a stunning reversal, a new Goldman Sachs survey reveals the ultra-rich are pulling billions out of private equity and piling into the stock market. Their allocation to private equity just saw its largest drop in years, falling from 26% to 21%. At the same time, their bets on public stocks have surged to 31%. But this isn't a retreat from risk. Far from it. Despite growing fears of geopolitical conflict and inflation, these investors are maintaining what Goldman Sachs calls a pro-risk asset mix. One executive revealed their mindset, saying if they are concerned about trade wars or market chaos, they are going to be ready to put money to work when these dislocations happen. And their number one target, artificial intelligence. A staggering 86% of these family offices are invested in AI, and they're using public stocks and ETFs as their primary way in. Now, you might be thinking, wait a minute, aren't these the people who should be making high-risk venture capital bets on the next big AI startup? Well, actually, this is a very deliberate strategy. For the first time since the year 2000, private market funds have underperformed the public markets. In fact, one recent analysis showed the S&P 500 delivering a 25% gain while a private equity index returned just 7%. So for these families, buying public stocks in AI infrastructure companies is seen as a more liquid, transparent, and frankly, better performing way to bet on the AI revolution right now. The situation presents a fascinating duality. On one side, they're pouring money into high-tech public stocks, while on the other, some are going decidedly old school. When it comes to protecting their fortunes, some are going old school, with one Goldman partner saying clients are demanding physical gold, wanting to literally see the serial number and know where it is in the vault. In some portfolios, gold makes up as much as 15%. This isn't as simple as just buying a gold bar. The logistics of managing a massive physical gold portfolio are immense, involving specialized high security vaults and duty-free warehouses just to ensure its safety and compliance. It's about a tangible sense of security in an uncertain world. Meanwhile, a new hedge is emerging. A third of all family offices are now invested in cryptocurrency, double the number from 2021. This trend is led by Asian family offices who see it as a shield against geopolitical instability. This is directly tied to major global shifts with trends like de-dollarization, where countries are actively trying to reduce their reliance on the US dollar. Assets like Bitcoin are seen as an alternative that can't be easily controlled by any single nation. In fact, research shows that stock portfolios in the region that were hedged with crypto had better risk-adjusted returns, giving this strategy real-world credibility. While other major investors like endowments are being forced to sell assets for cash, these family offices are doing the opposite. They're scooping up those same assets at a discount with the power to hold them for generations, unconcerned about a quick exit. This is what experts call patient capital, and it connects directly back to that drop in private equity we mentioned earlier. They aren't just selling, they are becoming buyers on the private equity secondary market where transaction volumes have exploded. This is where liquidity-strapped institutions are forced to sell their holdings, and these family offices are scooping them up at a major discount, ready to wait out any storm. It all begs the question, are the world's wealthiest families preparing for a downturn by planning to buy it all up? While some investors are finding new places to put their money, one major company is pulling £1 billion out of the UK, sending shockwaves through its life sciences sector. A US pharma giant just pulled that investment, and their reason is a direct shot at the government. Merck is scrapping a massive research hub it had already started building in London, and this wasn't just any building. This was meant to be an anchor for London's Knowledge Quarter in King's Cross, a world-leading ecosystem where life sciences and artificial intelligence come together. We're talking about a hub with over 100 organisations, including Google, Meta, and top universities, all focused on using AI for drug discovery. Losing an anchor tenant like Merck is a huge blow to that synergy. They're not just cancelling a plan, they're walking away from a construction site, cutting 125 jobs, and moving critical research to the US. Why? A company spokesperson put it bluntly, blaming the UK's undervaluation of innovative medicines. To understand their reasoning, you have to look at how the UK prices new drugs. In the UK, a government body called NICE decides if a new drug is cost-effective enough for the National Health Service. They use a metric called a Quality Adjusted Life Year, or QALE. Essentially, they put a price on how much a drug improves a patient's life. If a company's innovative new drug is priced higher than what the government is willing to pay per QALI, it doesn't get approved. This is the core of the conflict. A company's need for a return on its massive R&D investment versus a public health system's need to manage a tight budget. The UK boss of another pharmaceutical giant was even more direct, calling Britain largely uninvestable. That uninvestable comment points to a system called the Voluntary Scheme for Branded Medicines. It caps how much the NHS's spending on medicines can grow each year. If drug companies sell more than that cap, they have to pay a percentage of their revenue back to the government. This is sometimes called a clawback tax. Industry leaders are saying these rebate rates have become so high that it's just not financially viable for them to launch their newest, most advanced drugs here anymore. And Merck isn't alone in this. AstraZeneca recently ditched a £450 million expansion plan. Novartis says it has been unable to launch several new medicines in the country because of the declining competitiveness of the UK market. What really makes this decision sting is that for years, the UK has had a secret weapon in attracting these companies. It's called the UK Biobank. It's a massive state-owned database with detailed genetic and health information from 500,000 volunteers. For a drug company, this data is pure gold. It allows them to identify new drug targets and understand diseases on a whole new level. Companies were flocking to the UK to get access to this unique resource. The fact that they are now leaving despite this incredible asset shows just how badly they feel the financial model is broken. An Oxford University professor offered a single statistic that might put this all into perspective. While other developed nations spend between 14 and 20% of their healthcare budget on pharmaceuticals, the UK spends just 9%. That same professor, Sir John Bell, then delivered a chilling warning. After speaking to the heads of major drug companies, he said, "They're all in the same space. They're not going to do any more investing in the UK." The message from a shadow science secretary was unsparing. Simply put, the UK is not internationally competitive. The government must wake up and do so now. With £1 billion gone and warnings of a mass exodus of the world's biggest drug makers, the question is no longer if the UK has a problem, but how deep the damage will go. From a calculated corporate withdrawal to a sudden external attack, another pillar of the UK's industrial base has just been paralysed. A cyber attack has completely shut down Jaguar Land Rover, forcing the car maker to halt production of 1,000 cars a day. The company's UK factories have been shut down, which means 2 full weeks of global output have now been lost. The attack, which came to light on September 1st, forced JLR to shut down its entire IT network to protect itself. But in today's highly automated world, no IT means no production. The lines went completely dark. This is a direct hit on the heart of modern manufacturing, the just-in-time system. You know, car companies like JLR don't keep massive warehouses full of parts. Instead, they use hyper-digitized supply chains where parts arrive just hours or even minutes before they're needed on the assembly line. It's an incredibly efficient system, but also a fragile one. If the IT network that coordinates this delicate dance goes down, the entire system grinds to a halt instantly. And the chaos didn't stop at the factory gates. Dealerships were left unable to sell cars during what is usually one of their busiest times of the year, and service garages initially struggled to even get the parts they needed. The entire supply chain was thrown into disarray, and the impact goes far beyond JLR's own losses. JLR relies on a network of over 2,600 global suppliers. Many of these are smaller, specialised companies whose entire business model depends on JLR's constant production. When the assembly line stops, so do their orders and their payments. A single cyber attack doesn't just threaten one company, it threatens the financial stability of an entire regional manufacturing ecosystem. So who's behind this? A group calling itself Scattered Lapsus. Hunters has claimed responsibility. Now, get this. This isn't just one group. It's a terrifying merger of 3 notorious hacking syndicates. Scattered Spider, known for social engineering, the original Lapsus, famous for extortion, and Shiny Hunters, who specialise in massive data breaches. Their collaboration represents a new evolution in cybercrime. And what's really shocking is that their motivation seems to be shifting from just financial gain to industrial disruption and public notoriety, taunting their victims on platforms like Telegram. And this isn't their first high-profile victim. This is the same group linked to a cyber attack on the retailer MS, an incident that cost that company a staggering £300 million. This is where the situation takes a more complex turn. JLR, owned by India's Tata Motors, has now admitted that some company data has been affected. For an automaker, that affected data creates a multi-front crisis. Hackers are after three main things. First, customer information for identity theft. Second, vehicle telemetry data. That's the real-time location and driving behavior from your car, which can be used for tracking. And third, the crown jewels, engineering intellectual property. We're talking about design blueprints and proprietary technology, which is a gold mine for industrial espionage. They're not saying whose data yet, whether it's customers, suppliers, or their own internal files, but the company has officially reported the incident to the UK's data watchdog. This elevates the attack from a corporate problem to a national one. The involvement of the UK's National Cybersecurity Centre signals a major shift. While the auto industry isn't officially classified as critical national infrastructure like power or transport, its massive economic importance means an attack like this is treated as a matter of national security. The NCSC's involvement shows the government is taking a proactive stance to protect vital private industries that are essential to the country's stability. This all begs the question, in a world where a few keystrokes can bring a global manufacturing giant to its knees, what's the real endgame and who's next?
That's it for today on Voyage Daily Tech. Follow, share, and stay tuned for daily updates coming your way tomorrow.